Welcome to everyone. This is the Fraudcast. It's a weekly session that Vito and I host for folks managing fraud and risk. We talk about trends that we're seeing, talk about solutions to common problems that you guys are facing, and anything else kind of related to the fraud world. So I will kind of kick things off with some housekeeping items, and then Vito will take things away. We do have a special guest with us today, Steve, who's going to talk to us a little bit about fraud in the music and arts space. So it's going to be a really interesting discussion. But a couple of housekeeping items before we get things really kicked off. This is an open conversation, open discussion. This is not intended to be like your normal kind of webinar where you just kind of listen in. So if you're able to, please be on camera with us. We love seeing everybody's faces. We want this to feel as much as a conversation as possible, and seeing everybody's friendly faces and connecting with one another. So that being said, please do feel free to chat away in the chat. If you have something that comes to mind that you would like to just, interject and bring up, we love that. So feel free to come off mute and be like, hey, I have this question related to what Vito and Steve are talking about. Please do, if you're able to be on camera, please do. If not, that's totally fine. You can hang back and kind of just listen in on the conversation. And please do, whether you've joined us before or you're new, introduce yourselves in the chat. And feel free to connect with one another. So if you could throw in like your name, your company, your title, maybe where you're calling in from, and share your LinkedIn if you would like to connect with others. This is a community where you should feel like you could tap into what people are talking about here. People might bring up really interesting insights, and you may want to follow up with them and get some more details after. So feel free to throw in your LinkedIn in your introduction, so you could connect with folks and chat outside of this space. And with that being said, I'm going to hand things over to Vito.
What is up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Welcome back live from Nashville. It's a little bit different than the ranch. I got to say, I'm missing the sunsets. I'm missing my wife. I'm missing the dogs. I'm missing the chickens. But this is a pretty dang cool place to be. And I'm so happy that you're here with me today. We have an amazing, amazing program scheduled for you with a great guest. But I wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit for you before we jump into that. Tell me if this has happened to you, right? I left the ranch and I flew out to Nashville. And I know y'all have done this before. You get on the plane, you're sitting next to some randos. Eventually, the conversation comes up about what you do for a living. And you got to kind of scramble because you're trying to condense like 19 paragraphs into one. It always comes down to, we stop people from getting scammed. I help protect this. And then instantly, they don't hit you with oh, that's cool. They hit you, well, guess what? Last week, this thing happened to me. And I swear, every flight I'm on, and I got to do a lot of jumps. I got to connect a lot from the pastures that I take off from in the Texas Panhandle. But twice, 3 times, and even the people behind me were talking about different ways that they were defrauded. And it's kind of this revelatory moment where they're like, oh crap, this problem really does go on all over the place. I'm not the only one. So I want to give you a little bit of an insight into a revelatory moment that I had, okay? And it was around music. I remember when I first learned about Alan Freed, the famous disc jockey. He kind of got rock and roll started. And, a hero for many. Rock and roll is great. I love it. Let's go. But then I found out that old Alan over here was taking money under the table to play these records. They call it payola. And, you think this is something that's just from the 50s. Well, in my misspent childhood, I did a little bit of engineering at a radio station in New Jersey called FMU 91.1, the Fun FM. And our mixing board was state of the art because it was paid for by money that the broadcasters had to give back to the state of New York because of payola in 2007. That's when my head went, wait a minute, this is still going on? What the heck? And then imagine my surprise when old Jay-Z launched his platform Tidal. And lo and behold, there was bing, bang, boom. They're inflating numbers. There's fake streams. There's fake listeners. Is anything real, my friends? In this world of AI, bot-driven behaviors, agentic commerce, What's real? What's make believe? Who knows? My sacred music isn't even as pure as I thought it was. Well, guess what? Today, I'm going to list off some great accolades. This individual, my friend, has 20 years of experience in fraud prevention, AML, and risk, including leading content and fraud strategy at Sirius XM and Pandora. He specializes in scalable, ethical solutions that mitigate risk in music, media, and content, especially as AI and identity threats evolve. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Stephen Frank to the podcast. Steve,
thank you.
how you doing, brother?
I appreciate it. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm better now. So why don't you just give us a little bit of, you've been on a long and winding road yourself. That's kind of a theme here at the Fraudcast. Tell us a little bit about your long and winding road. Make it as long and winding as you want, brother. The stage is yours.
So as you said, 20 years experience, started in investment banking, financial services compliance in '08 when it was just becoming that sort of hot topic, okay? Took that experience for 10 years developing and maintaining an investment banking compliance program that was very prescribed, and took that into defense, where I realized that everything that I actually did is really transferable. So took that outside of the B2B world and went to actual retail customers and said, okay, let's use this foundational experience to really understand a retail customer and to have some fun with risk mitigation, So took that into advertising and marketing compliance. Hi, Tom. I'm actually from your area, so nice to meet you. And also then went into fine art and luxury e-commerce, where I led first attempts at fraud prevention and anti-money laundering as they were going public. And most recently, as you explained, I've been leading the fight against music fraud for Sirius XM Pandora, BeatDAP, and the Music Fights Fraud Alliance, where I advise the executive director and executive committee.
Before I start asking you questions, I'm just going to let everyone know here, I have very thick skin. And this is a fun conversation. Just jump off mute, because there's a million things to ask Steve after everything he just said. So your questions are amazing. Let him rip. But I want to address what to me is the elephant in the room. What is music fraud? What am I aiding and abetting in that I don't know about? What's going on behind the scenes? Show me the Wizard of Oz a little bit, the man behind the curtain. If you could break it down, and again, don't take your time on it. Don't rush this, because I am so what the heck? There's music fraud.
So at Sirius XM, I was looking at about 50 risks on the day-to-day. But generally, these risks would focus around, on the consumption side, answering 4 general questions. Are you a bot or are you human? Are you who you claim to be? Do you remain who you claim to be? And are you acting within scope of the way we think a human would act, but also within the confines of our terms and conditions? On the content creation side, it was more, are you who you claim to be? Are you authorized to send us the content? Is the content what you claim it is? And should it fit within the library that we maintain? So really asking myself those 8 questions and evolving the risks around those questions from the top of the funnel risks, which are, again, are our users who they claim to be, so that we can give proper numbers when we report them, but also is the content what we claim it is, so that it looks like normal consumption. And then also really just the bottom of the funnel, which is making sure that the company doesn't breach fiduciary responsibility when reporting those numbers from a financial perspective as a public company, of course. So,
gosh, just hearing that, my spidey senses tingle. I think a lot of you have these kind of same questions and obligations and worries, even though it might not be in the music world. Now I'm just spinning here. You got the almonds activated, Steve. Is it like I'm going to put a 1-second clip in there so that it gets 1 billion streams, something like that? Like, what was a comment?
Sometimes it is.
Give me a little taste.
So sometimes it's stealing a piece of work from another content creator and then streaming that content up so that your piece of content, that is that stolen piece of content, becomes the preferred version of that content, so that as the normal listeners begin to stream that piece of content, it's actually the stolen piece that's recording the streams, the royalties, and the charting data. So that's just one instance. There are other instances that I've seen where they're impacting album art, what art is actually seen on the user interface display, or something like stealing royalties from gift cards and testing other credit card information. So we saw the most basic of information that the everyday retail compliance, fraud prevention expert sees, to the more sophisticated music-driven fraud prevention that impacts royalties as well as charting.
And how do you juggle that as someone who's on the inside, someone who's concerned about risk, but also knowing that there's going to be like three factors here. You're on the inside, you're concerned about risk. You know the company needs to have like activity going on, but you also know the company is beholden to, like you said, some fiduciary responsibilities to be above board. Did you ever get a little hot under the collar? Like, hey, do I report that? Like, what do I do with this issue? That's a very universal kind of a reckoning moment that we all feel across all industries. I'm wondering how you dealt with that.
It's that question of management priorities and where we stand as risk mitigation experts. That's what it is. Is management going to be happy if I'm going against KPIs? If my job is to deflate numbers instead of inflating numbers? But it's not about having that conversation. It's about having the conversation of authentication and verification. Again, driven back to identity of customers and identity of content creators in my instance, or identities in your instances, depending on which ecosystem you happen to act in. So it's about authentication. It's about explaining to management that your hygiene as a business is what's most important. And there are strategies and methods of cleaning up a mature business that faces these risk mitigation issues, but those strategies should be discussed openly with your management, and their risk appetite should be taken into play, should be taken into account.
Do you feel that in identifying who these people are, you had a little bit more leeway with restrictive experiences, like, hey, send me a credit card, send me a bank statement? Or did you ever feel any pushback towards that? Like, there's the thing you wish you could have done, but you got, like, I would love to hear, because we're always kicking around the F word friction. Like, when do we introduce it? How do we introduce it? Who's going to poo-poo it, et cetera? Would love to hear about that.
So this is where my first dibs fine art experience comes into play, because fine art, as some of you may know, is actually governed globally under anti-money laundering regulation. But in the US, it's not quite there yet. It's listed under the Enablement Act, but not quite, active. So with that, constantly the conversation was, do I ask for someone's identification when I'm seeing potential fraud risk or I'm seeing money laundering risk? Or do I let that friction go in the case of just trying to get the business, And, look, fortunately in the United States, or unfortunately in the United States, the way our alphabet of regulators works is that they love to refer cases to one another. Okay. And this is something that I was fortunate enough to learn early in my career, as I had the opportunity to learn from a former prosecutor. They refer cases. The IRS has access to all of us because we all pay taxes. And so if they choose to audit us, then they can absolutely refer a case. So in the case of the music industry, for instance, constantly the conversation was, well, the music industry itself is operating as a money service business without a license. Okay. The goal of these streaming entities is to collect data and collect royalties, and then ultimately distribute them through professional rights organizations and labels to artists who ultimately get those royalties and rights. Well, with that, it's very interesting conversation because that itself, we've seen over the last 12 months, has evolved into one of these referrals where there are now federal prosecutors involved in a case of money laundering that did in fact happen on these streaming platforms. And therefore, the streaming platforms were used as a vehicle to commit money laundering.
It's one of those things where you get to say, I told you so. And then the echoes reverberate around the industry. And then you get that little pat on your back that your paranoias and suspicions were well-founded. I feel
And
like
as we all know, the point at which you've received that subpoena is the point at which you've already lost our fight because you're already going to spend a lot of money defending that subpoena.
you bring up a lot of money. I am no artiste. Some of my friends over here saw me do a little drawing on the table today, and they were, I was trying to make a nice drawing, and it was a terrifying drawing. That's kind of always the response I get when I draw. So with that being said, I always wondered how that banana with duct tape on the wall fetches $25 million. Are you telling me that that's not above board? Are you just breaking my heart there?
I love that you're asking this right now because this goes along with the AI content creation. There is a place in the world for everything. Everything. If we might not like it, but there's a place in the world for it, unfortunately, or fortunately for these AI creators. And so boosting them up on social media actually helps them achieve their goal in that you've now publicized them. People are going to be interested who weren't necessarily involved in this conversation at this point. So I'm more curious actually to see Spotify and Pandora and titles and streaming numbers today off those particular AI content, that particular AI content that was most recently discussed, to see if the organic growth has really skyrocketed since the article.
When we talk organic growth, are they forced to disclose that I have this amount of streams from humans and this amount from buyers, or does it all, I feel, get lumped into one big number?
We provide streaming numbers. So generally it is not, segregated out. Like there's no discussion of user A is this individual. So, no, none of that is actually broken down that far for the artists to see. So the artists can see geographic regions. They can see, demographics in certain cases. They can see, which one of their tracks is most successful where, but those sorts of trends are very broad. In terms of the actual knowledge of who a user is, that's with the streaming services and the distributors.
It's funny. 20 years ago, I had a punk rock band and the music is on Spotify. If you'd like to know who it is, you could DM me on LinkedIn. But according to Spotify, I'm big in Kazakhstan. So if you ever see me go missing here, you know where I'm rocking and rolling. But Steve, you brought up so many great points with so many great touch points. I'm going to take a sip of water. I invite all of you to fire away at Steve because even though we're doing the music, song, and dance, I know that this stuff is relevant to your world.
Yeah.
So please have at it. Sip of water incoming. Ryan, my brother, fire away, my friend.
Steve, thanks for this. I missed the start, so I apologize if you already covered this. But one of the big questions I kind of have from this that's always made me just curious, especially in this world of, we want more active users, is how did these companies that you've worked at, how do you feel about that kind of song and dance of managing risk and revenue when it comes to DAUs and MAUs? I think about Venmo, PayPal in the news a few years ago, and they got hit hard, $45 million loss because 4.5 million were fake. But those evaluation numbers look good because they had such high active users and got a higher valuation. So I would love your thoughts about that as someone who deals with that every day.
So Venmo and PayPal being money service businesses and regulated, they're, obviously in a different bracket than where I'm used to dealing with those KPIs. But I'm not saying that I'm not familiar with them. So basically, the argument there is that they should be, if you're in a regulated space, you should be ensuring that you're following regulation. With Venmo and PayPal, they actually have KYC obligations. So they weren't following their own KYC obligations. That's a big no-no. Okay. That is like a huge no-no, because that's something that the regulators, from the auditors, who are usually the most junior members of the team, to those senior regulators who are devising the policy, these are the very first things they ask about and ask for, and they have the best understanding of it. So that's with them. In an unregulated world, or a quasi-regulated world, where I was with First Dibs and where I am in the music industry, I would say that the balance is tough. Dealing with public companies, again, I would have to explain that there's a breach of fiduciary responsibility that they have to worry about. And that if enough of the customers are fake, then they would ultimately be breaching fiduciary responsibility by pumping their numbers. There's also areas where there's legal risk and there's reputation risk. So if you look at what happened over the last few years within streaming fraud, the streaming companies and DSPs, distributors, they lost a lot of value. They lost shareholder price. They lost a lot of users because they had seen that bots and other unauthenticated users were actually changing things amongst their platforms. For instance, like Sirius XM and Pandora. Pandora has a channel on Sirius XM. So if you start overinflating the plays on a certain track, that track could potentially appear on Sirius XM's Pandora Top 40 channel. Yeah. So there's also, in that industry, in the music industry, you're accountable to others, despite the fact that the business wouldn't be impacted by royalties, which I think is what you were asking kind of about with the AI monetization stuff and where you're going. Yeah. So look, there's a place in the world for AI, as I said. And I really think that the creators do deserve some money, so long as they're not stealing the basis of their creation. So, if you're going to pay a rights holder for the use of their name, image, and likeness, I'm all for that. Get them participating in a project. I think that a lot of artists would actually be interested in the use of technology.
There's such an art to prompting. Like, there is such an art. And I took a course on it, and I'm not even quite there yet, but I've seen some of these essay level prompts that get you this very particular thing. And that takes a lot of skill. So I appreciate that you say that, because I do like the push to demonetize strictly AI based stuff. I like that. I like using content credentials to verify that I'm looking at something real or not original. But yeah, it's like, reward those people who are experts at that, the same way, Zuck is handing out fat contracts to the top AI people to join his company. So
exactly. Yes. If you can use it appropriately, then I'm game. I think you prop it in the libraries. You see that if it becomes popular, that's great. Rap music, jazz music, country music, all of these genres started the same way. Okay. Not everyone's going to love it. I don't love country music.
Come on, Steve.
You won't catch me listening to Morgan Wallen. It's just not who I am. But you may catch Vito, and, we're both New Yorkers. So, hey, it doesn't matter necessarily the demographic either. If someone likes it, it deserves a place.
You got me rolling, dude. That's please, I'm going to be laughing for the next 2 minutes here. But you know what? Real quick, Steve,
yeah.
Let's say you go into e-commerce, right? Yeah. And let's say we're talking about agentic shoppers, bot-driven shoppers, robots who are spinning up accounts. I'm going with my grandpa Vito. Them robots are spinning up accounts, and they're making. Now they're also populating my user database. We've seen with at least Amazon's agentic shopping that if Vito Petruzzelli makes 10 orders, it's going to come in 10 new accounts. Do you think is there a fiduciary responsibility element there, where obviously those numbers are going to be reported to somebody, especially in a public company type situation? Do you feel any pressure under the collar there with bot driven orders and what needs to be reported properly? Do you get any sort of ick from that?
back to identity, and this is the basis of our conversation today. Back to identity and webbing identity and knowing who you're doing business with and the ultimate beneficial owner of the device, the account, the identity string that you're looking at. I think agentic, buying is great. I think that making life easier is what it's all about. And it's if it's tied to a cryptographic identity string that I can then web into a network that says that this is Vito because of the device, service, pattern, and it's not actually like based on some other behavioral bot activity. For instance, we're seeing typing that happens to be too fast to be human. Then I think that there's a place for it. It can be discovered, it can be tracked, and then it can be reconciled in terms of the correct amount of accounts for reporting, correct amount of transactions for reporting, etc.
I think what you're getting at here is the frontier, a new frontier in personalization, a new frontier in making that web. Because in the paucity of information, when we don't have a solid device, you don't have a solid IP, you don't even have a solid email, fraud professionals, risk professionals, really anybody in e-commerce are going to have to start saying, okay, how do we really draw that web? And my head goes to the folks who are in cryptocurrency and blockchain analysis, being able to draw these very esoteric webs.
Yes.
Am I barking up the right tree there?
I caution the use of Web3, NFT, and cryptocurrency professionals only because I did work at Voyager Digital for 1 week before I realized that they were screwing up the rest of the crypto market. So I do caution the use of them, but yes, you're in the right ballpark. I work with groups like Hand Digital, where they're using cryptographic identity to tie to things like electronic versions of celebrities that tie back to then paying royalties. For instance, LeBron James in NBA 2K games may have a cryptographic string that begins with the same cryptographic identity but has a different ending so that the companies that are involved in the creation and the payments don't actually have to maintain any of LeBron James's actual background information, like his social security number, his home address, etc., or bank account number, but they could still make proper royalty payments to him.
Fascinating,
Yeah,
because I'm thinking about the tokenization of our payment instruments, but we're really talking about the tokenization of our identities and having multiple identities that are multiply saleable. This is
so
write
we
this
can
down, my friends.
tokenize any positive affirmative statement and any legal document. You can say, I am Vito Petruzzelli and here's my ID, and that can be tokenized. If you look at the company called Switchchord, there's a company in music that's actually tokenizing content for the royalty payments. So Switchchord is that one.
Just as an aside, and then I'm going to take another drink of water. Do you think, now my music brain is spinning. With this kind of IP based thinking, do you think the future is going to be like, you know how the Beatles and Rolling Stones are just always like everywhere, there's stalwarts? Do you think there's going to be like new album by the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, encouraged or like as seen through the lens of this prompt? Like, the George Martin estate started making these prompts. Like, do you think that's the future of the streaming world, where like you'll never be able to get rid of the Beatles? Like they'll always be around. Is that? I'm kind of off on one, but I'm just curious.
Well, no, I'm a little scared actually of that, because the way the estates, the way the catalogs are being sold, the way name, image, and likeness can be sold away pretty much. It's scary because if they're tied to one of these investment funds, at what point does an investment fund say enough of a return is enough of a return? especially if it's someone like the Beatles or Prince, and they eventually run out of that, vault full of content that Prince supposedly left, at what point does, the motivation factor kind of dissipate and the desire for a legacy for the artist, actually take over? So that's really the question. And that's a fear from the love of the art. But from a perspective of, business is business, it's probably going to happen.
You heard it here first, my friends. Wait for the Beatles' 30th album to drop soon. It's a hip hop album. You're never going to believe it. It's crazy. I'm going to take another sip of water. Please, my friends, jump in. I want to also say hello to Ron. Ron Akers, big Bucks fan. I'm a John Gruden guy myself. I know you were there for the glory days, perhaps. Ron, I don't know if you want to say hi or if you got any questions for Steve. Would love to hear from you.
No, super excited, guys. Thanks for having me. First time here. Glad to be able to collaborate with you guys, learn more about what's to come in the payments landscape. Particular verticals are always good to learn about. I actually work some high volume music festivals in South Florida. So definitely plays into some of the verticals that we support. So just sitting in, absorbing, soaking it in, and appreciate the collaboration from everyone as well.
Yeah, Ron, we'll connect after for sure.
Y'all, again, sip of water incoming, please, especially my e-commerce folks. If you had Steve, consulting with you, how would you pick his brain, especially with some of the things that you've got going on, especially with the personalization question we've been asking ourselves?
Buyer protection, seller performance, chargebacks. I have a 96% chargeback win rate on appeals. So, please, by all means, ask away. Like, I'm ready for you. Having worked at First Dibs, dealt with jewelry, collectibles, so any sort of thing you guys have for me.
I'm curious to hear about that 96% win rate, Steve.
Yeah, that's I'll tell you actually. So it's funny. I enjoy fighting with credit card companies. That's where that comes from, actually. I get a kick out of it. So ultimately, making calls to Amex, things like, and having honest conversations with Amex management helped me get that win rate. Because when I started at First Dibs, I had reviewed a lot of the chargebacks. For instance, one of the chargebacks that I noted that was very interesting was a young man ordered a customized mirror with lights on the back for his girlfriend at the time. They broke up during the time that it was being customized and made. And so he tried to cancel the order, couldn't cancel it, so he charged it back. Explained to Amex a number of times, even though they kept blocking this, as to why we had actually rejected the chargeback and why we were fighting it. And they still were pushing. So I had explained to them that as an Amex customer myself, that would be like me charging back everything that my ex-wife had charged on my credit card. So having honest conversations at the beginning of your relationship is actually an important thing. When you start your position, you should be doing this. Number one, they should know who you are on the everyday. Number two is not trusting it to AI, actually. Look, AI is great. Do not get me wrong, but they want to see templated materials so that their manual processes are easier. They want to see, this is the spot that you comment on the terms. This is the spot that you comment on the transactions. This is the spot that you comment on the communications. Done. Keep it concise, keep it to the point, drill down. If you need to work with your terms, you need to contact your legal team and tell your legal team what kind of pushback you are seeing from your credit card companies. And again, that's where the relationship comes into play. Go ahead, Shelly. Jump in,
real quick. When I was hearing that, I'm like, that's straight out of the Susie School of Communication. So I'm so glad you raised your hand, Shelly.
Thank you so much, Steve. So I love the comment about not relying on AI because I keep telling that to my partners. I'm like, no, we cannot do this with AI. However, we're now getting feedback from the banks that they're relying on AI to read our packets. So how do we compete without using AI with AI?
Who is your bank?
We deal with lots. I'm at Peloton, so our payment processor
Okay,
is
yeah.
Stripe,
Opt out.
but I deal with all of them.
Opt out.
You can opt out. Okay,
Oh,
good to
yeah.
know.
And
Great.
so there is zero regulation, banking regulation that says that there's a requirement to do that. There is banking regulation that says there's manual requirements. I would tell them, I do not agree with that process and I would like to opt out. If they
Nice.
are still pushing back, then I would honestly raise you. See, you're at a position like my position was most recently, where you have the heavy lift behind you. So they would rather see Peloton continue to be the customer as opposed to Peloton go out and say, well, look, we're no longer a customer because realistically, I can't give management, a good positive review that they're not going to run into trouble with financials and operations and legal practices after this. And using a group like Just AI, they're great. Don't get me wrong. They're great if you have just a large volume of chargebacks that are really unmanageable and you're doing it to create the basis of your chargebacks, but still they are going to require a heavy manual hand in each.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Quick question.
Yep.
Do you have any high level, and this might be a whole show, but any high level opinion on 3D Secure?
I have a lot of opinions on
Cook, Steve, cook.
Yeah. I don't want to burn everything right now. You want to talk offline after?
Oh, give us a little bit, just a little taste.
I only don't because being involved in so many of these payment processes, you can say so much that could light the fire. So I don't want to necessarily burn everything down right now. So if you message me offline, I will definitely follow up on with you on this, and we can absolutely talk details. I want to know what you're thinking first, because, God, sorry.
We're pretty close to turning this on because we had pretty bad experience last year. I'd definitely love to connect with you offline if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm putting my Gmail in the chat now. Here's my phone number too.
Oh,
And Vito, I think it's very important that we call out that the lights above you they look like thought bubbles. So you might be able to use that as content in the future.
Tom, I could. Thank you. I wish there was more than one thought at any time going on.
There's like 4 of them. So you're good.
The paint chips I ate as a kid have nullified that. So, I tell you though, and Tom, you just got the perfect segue right there. We've had so many good sessions here, but I'd hazard to say that we've all learned a mountain's worth today between the cryptographic identities, between chargeback best practices. All of this is just crazy stuff. Hands up in the chat if you think we got to do a round 2 with Mr. Steve here. I'm wondering if you're also barking. We got a claps. Oh, look at this. We got the thumbs up going crazy. Yes, we got the Shelly claps. We got it going on. So we definitely got to do a round 2 here. Obviously, you have Steve's contact information. But, you could reach out to Steve, you could reach out to me, you could reach out to anyone, and please say, I wish we could pick Steve's brain about this, about that, because this is just a really great conversation. Steve, with the 2 minutes we've got left, what is your message of hope and caution for everybody in the space? Where would you be looking right now, and where would you feel kind of comfortable right now? What's your thoughts there?
It's actually the same. And it's about all of our roles, actually. So our roles right now are all getting eaten up. Okay. They're not getting eaten up by AI and tech. They're actually getting eaten up by that evil F word, friction. Okay. It appears that a lot of the trust and safety leadership roles are going to the people that don't have experience in trust, safety, fraud prevention, identity verification, anti-money laundering, content mod, those areas. It appears like it's going to the people who deal more with customer support. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. But I think that as we begin to look for, the leaders to fill out our teams, I think that we have to look at that as well. because, even yesterday I was on the phone with my friend James Atwater, who just retired early in his 38 years old from the FBI. And, he's out there looking for a role too. We're all out there looking for roles, and yet there's no roles for us. So I think that's, my hope is that there are roles for us in the future, but that's also a cautionary tale, because as all of our companies, unfortunately, are resizing, it's a reality for us all.
It truly is. And you know what? We've got a really great network of people here. We all look out for each other. Please connect. Please, shout out Steve, shout us all out. And
Please do.
Let's stay ahead of the fight, my friends. I want to thank you all the way from Nashville. Steve, I want to thank you personally. A round of applause. Some poetry snaps for you.
Thank you all.
Phone over here, Steve. It is truly a blessing to be around you every week and to get to have these conversations. I don't know if I'm going to be able to sleep tonight. There's a billion thoughts going through my mind. So, Steve, you might be getting those 2 a.m. texts from me like, dude, what do you do in this situation? And you know what? Y'all got Steve's number too now. So there you go.
Yes, please. Please reach out. I'm so serious. I want to hear from you all. I want to see you all. I want to meet you all. So please do reach out.
Maybe we can all come out to this the Shining-esque bar one day. We could do a little Fraudcast field trip for all my friends who might be listening in on this. That could be a great idea. But for everybody, I hope you have a beautiful rest of your week. It's raining here in Nashville. It's raining all over. I hope you stay dry. If it's raining by you, I don't know, or whatever. Maybe you're praying for rain. That's cool too. But thank you so much for coming out. It is an absolute joy to be with you. I hope you have a beautiful week. And until next time, my friends, we'll see you next Wednesday. Have a great one, y'all.